Shasta Trinity is one of the largest wilderness areas in the United States. Towering pines, endless trails, deep lonely silence. It's the kind of place hikers go to clear their minds. And sometimes, it's the last place they're ever seen. In October of 2019, a 29-year-old solo backpacker named Daniel Reed disappeared while hiking near Deadfall Lakes Trail in Northern California. He was a small outdoor YouTuber, barely 2,000 subscribers, a quiet, reserved guy from Washington State who loved hiking alone. His content was simple: gear reviews, campfire cooking, long solo treks with GoPro clips and commentary. But on his final trip, something changed. According to police and park ranger reports, Daniel checked in at the visitor center in Mount Shasta before heading toward the Deadfall Lakes Loop, a popular but remote trail known for its beautiful alpine views. He had food for 5 days, a satellite phone, 2 cameras, 1 drone. Everything seemed normal until he stopped uploading. 5 days passed, then 10. His family reported him missing. Search and rescue teams found his vehicle parked near the trailhead, still locked, battery charged. Then they found his tent deep in the forest at a legal backcountry site about 6 miles from the main trail. Inside, his gear: journal, drone remote, firewood stacked, camera batteries drained. No signs of struggle, no blood, just emptiness. Then something strange happened. On the 11th day of searching, one of Daniel's drones was recovered, about 2 miles from his tent. It had crashed in a ravine and was badly damaged, but the memory card was intact. What was on that card is what makes this case different from most disappearances. The footage, time-stamped and verified by rangers, showed Daniel walking through the woods. His voice was calm but distracted. He kept mentioning hearing something at night. Whispers, footsteps, crackling sounds in the trees. His last full clip is dated October 18th, 2019, about 3 days before search teams believe he vanished. In it, Daniel speaks to the camera. "I've been hearing weird things outside the tent, like someone's walking around my camp. I called out. No one answered. Last night, I thought I saw a light in the woods, like a fire. But there's no one out here. At least, there shouldn't be." He turns the camera toward the trees. There's nothing visible, but he keeps filming, following the direction of the light he said he saw. That's when the feed cuts off. And Daniel Reed was never seen again. His disappearance is still listed as unresolved. The footage was never released to the public, only summarized in redacted ranger reports and his missing person file. Locals near Mount Shasta, though, they have their own ideas. Some claim that area is cursed. Others say strange things have always happened in that forest. But the most common story, the one told in quiet whispers at campgrounds, is about a fire that burns deep in the woods, one that no one lights. They say if you see it, don't follow it, because it's not a fire you're meant to find. It's a fire that finds you. When Daniel's drone footage surfaced, it gave search teams hope. But hope didn't last long, because what came next only raised more questions. According to the ranger logs, Daniel's last known location, based on his recovered drone footage, was about 1.8 miles west of his tent. The area is thick with pine, unmarked trails, few landmarks, the kind of place where GPS signal cuts out fast. Search teams scoured it for 3 days. No signs, no footprints, nothing to suggest where he went or why he left his base camp in the first place. Then they found something strange, buried under a log, just off a narrow game trail. Was a spiral-bound notebook weather damaged, pages smeared, but the name on the inside cover was clear. Daniel Reed. It wasn't part of the journal in his tent. This one was different, private. The final entries, dated the day before his presumed disappearance, read like the thoughts of a man losing sleep and slowly unraveling. Can't tell how long I've been out here. Nights feel longer. Sleep doesn't come easy. I thought I saw someone last night, a man, or maybe a shape, standing near the tree line. I keep hearing something crackling. Not an animal, not wind. It's lower, like a fire. Am I being followed, or am I just paranoid? This journal was kept out of the public case files for months, but a former ranger who worked the search anonymously posted about it in a missing hikers forum in late 2021. They claimed something was scratched into the final page. Not written, scratched, like with a knife or stone. A single word. Look. What that meant, nobody knows. Some say Daniel was trying to mark something important. Others believe he was hallucinating, suffering from a well-known condition called wilderness-induced psychosis. It happens when people spend too many days alone in the wild. Dehydration, sleep deprivation, isolation. They start hearing voices, seeing shadows, thinking the forest is watching them. But here's the thing. Daniel wasn't new to this. He'd logged over 40 solo hikes, camped in the Rockies, the Cascades, the Yukon, and never once reported panic, delusions, or fear. Until this trip. Daniel's family doesn't believe he imagined what he saw. His sister, Rachel, spoke with a podcast in 2022. He wasn't the kind of guy to spook easily. He said being in the woods was like therapy to him. If he said something was out there, I believe him. After 3 weeks of searching, the operation was scaled back. Daniel's family hired a private search party. They found no bones, no clothing, not even gear. The forest just took him. And yet rumors started to spread. Campers in the area, far from the official search grid, began reporting strange things. A figure. Tall, still. Always just at the edge of firelight, never speaking, never moving, just standing there. Some said it was a drifter. Others said it was a ranger watching the camps for safety. But one couple, camping near Toad Lake, had a different story. They say around 2 a.m., they saw a figure by the trees. They thought it was a bear until it stood up straight. Then they saw the reflection of eyes, not animal eyes, human, watching. They called out, no answer. The figure stepped back and vanished into the trees without a sound. The man reported it to rangers who logged it as unconfirmed sighting, human shape. 3 nights later, another camper, 2 miles south, saw the same thing. And the reports haven't stopped since. Some say Daniel's still out there, living off-grid, hiding, lost in his own mind. Others believe something found him, and now uses the firelight to draw others in. Whatever the truth is, Daniel Reed's case remains open. And if you ever find yourself deep in the Shasta Trinity wilderness, and you see a flicker of orange out in the trees, don't look, because it may already be looking at you. After Daniel Reed disappeared, and after the drone footage was analyzed, it seemed like that was it. Another tragic missing hiker story. Until something else surfaced, a piece of digital evidence even the official reports couldn't explain. In early 2020, just a few months after the search had gone cold, a user posted in a private subreddit for wilderness survivalists. Their post was titled, "Found corrupted GoPro SD near Mount Shasta Trailhead. Help fixing audio?" The user uploaded a single 2-minute audio file, claiming it came from a broken SD card they bought at a swap meet in Reading. They said they used recovery software to restore what was left. They didn't mention Daniel Reed by name, but anyone who followed his case recognized the voice. The recording starts like many of Daniel's uploads, soft-spoken, tired, but clear. Night 4. I don't know what time it is. My watch stopped this morning. I can't sleep. I keep hearing someone walking around the camp, not animals, 2 feet, human. But every time I open the tent, there's nothing there. He pauses. You hear wind. Then, last night I saw a light again, same spot, through the trees. Looks like fire. I'm gonna check it out tomorrow, just to make sure it's not another hiker. Can't risk someone getting lost. Then there's a pause, followed by something chilling, a low sound, faint at first, then growing louder, like someone breathing, but not Daniel. It doesn't come from the mic. It's further off, in the trees, just breathing. Slow, wet, raspy. Daniel doesn't say anything for several seconds. Then, just before the file cuts out, I hear it again. It's closer now. The post was deleted within 24 hours. The user's account, gone. But not before several Reddit users downloaded the audio. One of them, a sound engineer from Arizona, analyzed the clip and uploaded his results in a deep dive thread months later. He claimed the breathing was not Daniel's, not the same vocal signature, not the same mic distance. He also noted something else. There was an ultrasonic spike in the waveform during the last 5 seconds, like feedback, or an echo, but not an echo of Daniel's voice, an echo of the word. Look, that's the same word scratched into the final page of his hidden journal. Coincidence? The forest doesn't leave fingerprints. After that post, more digital traces began surfacing. Small things. A geocaching forum user claimed to have found a lens cap labeled ReadCam 2 deep off trail. A man on TikTok claimed his dog refused to enter a certain stretch of woods near the Deadfall Lakes Trail. Hikers mentioned hearing low breathing sounds at night, but only between 2 and 3 a.m. No one had answers. But the pattern was forming. Whatever happened to Daniel, it wasn't just a disappearance. It was something that left residue, fear, sound, a presence. And then there's the theory. Some wilderness specialists believe Daniel may have experienced something called the third man factor. It's a survival phenomenon, when people in extreme isolation begin sensing a presence near them. Not imaginary. They feel it's helping, guiding them, protecting them. But in rare cases, it turns, becomes threatening, malevolent. Whatever Daniel heard out there, it was real to him. And maybe it wasn't in his head. The GoPro audio was never verified publicly. But to this day, hikers near that region still talk about the sound. If you camp out near the trail's western edge and stay up past 2 a.m., you might hear the wind shift. You might hear breathing that isn't yours. And if you're really unlucky, you might hear the whisper, "Look." You'd think that after years of silence, Daniel Reed's case would fade. But the opposite happened, because the deeper people dug, the more strange pieces started showing up. In late 2021, almost 2 full years after Daniel vanished, a post appeared on a niche camping gear message board. Not Reddit, not any mainstream forum. This was a low-traffic site used mostly by Pacific Northwest hikers. The post's title was simple. Found camera SD card in waterproof pouch. 1 image restored. Attached was a single JPEG file, blurry, low light, taken just above ground level, tilted as if the camera had been dropped. but the content of the image chilled everyone who saw it. It showed a wooded slope, trees dark and looming, and in the distance, a faint orange glow. Not from a campfire, there was no flame, just light, suspended, floating in midair behind a tree line, and in front of it, a silhouette, tall, unmoving, arms long, almost disproportionate. Its head was turned, not toward the light, but toward the camera, as if it knew it was being watched. Metadata from the file revealed a timestamp. August 18th, 2019, 2:13 a.m. The same night Daniel was last seen alive. GPS tagging was partially corrupted, but partial coordinates match a slope just north of Lower Deadfall Lake, an area that had never been fully searched due to dense brush and steep terrain. The post was removed less than an hour after it went up. No username, no download links. Only reposted screenshots remain, passed around by digital sleuths. But that image triggered something else. Other cases. Cases from the same region, spanning back decades. One in particular, 1993. A young woman named Kayla Madsen, age 24, went missing while solo hiking west of Mount Eddy. Her camp was found intact, like Daniel's. Her tent unzipped, her boots inside. A fire pit, cold but used. She was never found. But here's the kicker. Her journal, recovered weeks later by a ranger, had almost identical wording to Daniel's. I keep hearing a low sound at night. It's not an animal. The light in the trees won't go away. And one more line, written in all caps near the end. If you see the light, don't follow it. 2 disappearances, 26 years apart, same wilderness, same details. It led some online researchers to propose a disturbing theory that the Shasta Trinity region may be home to a localized phenomenon. A kind of recurring event seen only by those who isolate themselves deep in the woods. They don't call it a creature, they don't call it a ghost, they call it the firekeeper. A presence that appears at night, always just out of reach, silent, still, watching, drawing in the lonely, the lost, the ones looking for something beyond the trees. Some say it appears only when certain things align, the time of year, the moon phase, and most of all, when you're completely alone. The image from Daniel's SD card isn't proof. It's grainy, debated. But to the people who know the woods, it's enough. Daniel's case hasn't been officially reopened, but to this day, hikers still report strange lights in that forest. Most dismiss it. Drone lights, flashbacks, maybe campers on a distant ridge, but the ones who've seen it say the same thing. It doesn't flicker. It doesn't move. It just burns, quietly, waiting. And if you step toward it, even just once, you may never step back, because some lights aren't meant to be followed. Some lights are meant to lead you away. Some stories don't end with answers. They end with echoes. Echoes that drift between forums, late-night phone calls, and the quiet conversations around campfires. Daniel Reed's story is one of those. By early 2022, Daniel had been missing for nearly 3 years. No body, no confirmed evidence, just whispers. But then came the final twist, one that changed how people viewed the entire case. A retired Forest Service ranger, who asked to remain anonymous, contacted an independent investigative podcaster. He claimed he'd been following the Daniel Reed story quietly because it reminded him of something he encountered back in 1984. Same region, same time of year, same strange reports of light without flame deep in the woods. He told a story about a lost Boy Scout troop. They were found unharmed, except for one scout who'd gone missing for nearly 11 hours. When they located him, He was standing barefoot by a burnt stump, whispering a single word. "Look." The ranger claimed he saw something that day too, not the light, but the impression of something standing in the trees. He said, "It felt like it had always been there, like the forest belonged to it." That ranger later retired early, citing psychological strain. He moved to New Mexico, never spoke publicly again until that podcast interview. But here's the final piece. In August 2022, a new video surfaced on a YouTube channel with less than 300 subscribers. It was titled, "Solo Fire Watch, Northern California, 3 Nights." The video was a peaceful vlog, a man in his mid-30s talking about camping alone in the Shasta Trinity backcountry. He cooked simple meals, read from a book. The footage was mundane until night 2. At around the 18-minute mark, the man, who never gives his real name, turns the camera to face a distant tree line and says, "There's a light over there. Hasn't moved in half an hour. Weird. Doesn't look like fire." He zooms in, but the camera won't focus. Then, he chuckles. Maybe it's the firekeeper everyone keeps talking about. He laughs again, but here's the thing. He never uploaded again. The channel hasn't posted since. Comments are locked. No email, no Instagram, no sign of him anywhere. But his video remains. And just before it cuts to black, he mutters something under his breath. "I think it's watching." So now there's a theory that Daniel Reed didn't disappear in the forest. He became a part of it. That maybe the firekeeper isn't a thing you meet. It's a title you inherit. Maybe every few years, someone follows the light, and when they do, someone else hears the whisper, sees the glow. There's no way to prove any of it, but people say the glow still appears, that on certain nights, if the conditions are just right, you can see it from the upper ridge near the trail marker at mile 8. Some hikers still go there, some camp, and some just stare out into the dark, waiting. If you ever find yourself deep in the Shasta Trinity wilderness and you see a distant flickering orange light, don't follow it, don't call out, and whatever you do, don't look straight into it, because the last person who did never needed a flashlight again. Of course, Daniel Reed's case isn't the only time a campfire became a gateway to something darker. Because deep in Virginia's Blue Ridge, there's another name that gets whispered around fires, one that locals won't even write down anymore. They call it Camp Devil's Hollow. Some places you can find on a map, others find you. This is the story of a forgotten camp deep in Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains. A place with no official trail, no ranger records, and no reason anyone should have known it was there. Except someone did. In early September of 2014, 3 college students from Richmond, Nate, Rhea, and Calvin, decided to take a weekend backpacking trip before fall semester hit full swing. They weren't seasoned hikers, but Calvin had just inherited a trunk of old gear from his uncle, who'd lived off-grid for a while. In that trunk was a hand-drawn topographic map, folded between 2 water-damaged trail guides from the 80s. The map showed a rough route winding off the Appalachian Trail, and at the bottom edge, scribbled in faded ink, were the words, "Devil's Hollow, Original CCC Camp, do not stay past dark." They thought it was a joke, just some old local myth, the kind of weird campfire warning people used to write into logs to freak out their buddies. But Nate, the most curious of the bunch, insisted they check it out. They packed light, started their hike from the Mauhar Trail, and by mid-afternoon, they'd gone off path, climbing down a brush-covered slope that clearly hadn't seen foot traffic in decades. But just as the light started to dip behind the ridge, they found it. A clearing, wide and unnatural, overgrown but not wild, and right in the center were the foundations. Stone outlines of structures long gone, a rusted metal frame, maybe a bunkhouse, even remnants of a fire ring, sunken into the soil like it hadn't been touched in half a century. No signs, no plaques, just dead silence, and the feeling that something had been buried, not abandoned. They set up camp anyway. Nate was thrilled, documenting everything with his phone, narrating like it was a Discovery Channel special. Calvin kept joking about how they were going to wake up possessed. But Rhea, she didn't talk much after they arrived. Later, she'd tell investigators something that would stick with me forever. The moment we stepped into that hollow, it felt like the trees were holding their breath. That night, the air dropped 20 degrees. No clouds, no wind, just cold. And around 2:47 a.m., according to Calvin's phone log, Nate walked out of his tent, barefoot, silent, and smiling. It's one thing to be spooked on a trail. It's another thing entirely when the strangest person in camp is your friend. Calvin woke first. He said it was the sound of twigs cracking, not like a raccoon rummaging, but methodical. Footsteps. He looked over and saw Nate's tent unzipped, the flaps swinging slightly. At first, he thought maybe Nate had gone to pee. But then he noticed two things. One, Nate's boots were still sitting by the fire pit. Two, the flashlight was still in the tent. Rhea was already sitting up, staring across the clearing. She whispered, "Is that Nate?" Standing just beyond the tree line, barely visible in the moonlight, was the outline of a person. Still, facing them, arms at his side. Calvin whispered Nate's name. No answer. He tried again. Louder. That's when the figure slowly turned and walked back into the woods. Barefoot. They both scrambled out, calling after him. No response. But when they followed the disturbed brush down a narrow game trail, they found something deeply unsettling. A small circle. Stones. Fresh ashes. And something worse. Nate's phone. Still recording. Still warm. And on the screen, a 13-minute video file had just finished saving. They didn't open it right away. They were panicking, shouting his name. Eventually, they went back to camp, hoping Nate had circled around. But the tent was still empty. That's when Calvin played the video. It started normal. Nate filming the fire, joking about how he was going to scare the others in the morning with ghost stories. Then, he looked up and whispered, "I think there's someone in the woods." The video turned, jostling as he stood and walked barefoot into the brush. The camera was shaky, low quality in the dark, but there was a soft glow ahead. A flicker. Orange. Like a lantern. But here's the detail that chilled Calvin and Rhea both. At the 11-minute mark, Nate muttered something to himself. "I knew it. It's just like the map said." Then, a final whisper. "They're still here." And the screen went black. That was the last time they ever saw Nate. No screams, no struggle, just a fading light, a video, and an overwhelming, suffocating silence. They waited until first light, then packed up in silence. Calvin marked the GPS location on his offline app, and they hiked straight back to the car, 6 hours in near total silence. They went to the rangers, filed a report, but when search and rescue teams returned to the site a week later, there was no fire pit, no foundation ruins, no trace of Nate, only trees, thick, unbroken forest, as if the Paw Hollow had closed itself. The only thing Calvin had left was that map, the original hand-drawn one they found in his uncle's old camping trunk. He took it to a local historian at a small university near Roanoke. She studied it carefully and said something that kept Calvin up for months. This section of the ridge, it burned in 1943. The CCC camp here was destroyed. There shouldn't be anything left at all. He asked if she believed in hauntings. She just shook her head. Not ghosts, but some places don't forget what they were forced to bury. The days after Nate disappeared felt like walking through a waking nightmare. Time stretched and warped around Calvin and Rhea as the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting, watching them. No search party could find a trace of him. No footprints led away from camp. No signs of struggle. No dropped gear. Only silence. They drove back to Richmond without speaking much. The silence between them thick and suffocating, filled with questions that had no answers. Calvin couldn't stop staring at the crumpled map, tracing the faded lines with trembling fingers. Rhea sat in the back seat, gripping the edge of the door handle, eyes wide but empty, as if her mind was still lost somewhere inside that hollow. For weeks, the forest haunted their dreams. Calvin dreamed of firelight flickering deep among twisted trees, shadows moving just beyond sight. Rhea's dreams were darker, filled with whispers she couldn't understand, voices calling her name, pulling her back to that clearing. One late October evening, just before Halloween, Calvin's phone buzzed with a message. No caller ID, no text, just a photo. The image was grainy and out of focus, a campfire glowing orange and yellow in the dead of night, flames licking the cold air. But in the center of the firelight, a shadow stood motionless, tall, thin, its shape indistinct but unmistakably human. Calvin's heart pounded as he stared at the image. He forwarded it to Rhea, but she never responded. Days passed. Rhea grew quieter. One afternoon, she announced she was going hiking alone near the Blue Ridge Parkway, somewhere she used to go to clear her head. Calvin begged her not to go, but she needed to feel alive, she said. Hours later, she called Calvin, voice shaking. She told him she felt eyes on her the whole time, fingers brushing her shoulder, cold air at her neck, but every time she looked, nothing was there. Still, she could feel something, moving just out of sight. When she got home, she showed Calvin photos she'd taken. Most were normal, but one showed something disturbing. A dark, blurry figure lurking behind a cluster of trees, watching. Calvin tried to explain it away. Shadows, camera glitches, overactive imagination. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Something had followed them back from the hollow. They started avoiding the woods, avoiding each other. Their lives unraveling like the frayed edges of the map Calvin still held. The forest doesn't just take, it watches, it waits, and some say it remembers. Calvin reached out to a local historian specializing in Appalachian folklore. She told him about the history of the Civilian Conservation Corps camp that once operated in the area, a place that burned down in 1943 under mysterious circumstances. She said many old-timers believed the site was cursed, haunted not by ghosts, but by memories too dark to be spoken aloud. If you ever find yourself near Devil's Hollow, don't walk barefoot, don't light a fire after dark, and don't look too closely into the trees, because sometimes the hollow watches back. The weeks after Rhea's hike were the hardest. Calvin tried to keep things together, but the hollow's shadow was growing longer. No one could explain what was happening, but everyone felt it. Calvin started hearing the whispers. At first, it was only at night, barely audible murmurs that seemed to seep through the walls of his apartment. Soft, indistinct voices, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying. He tried to convince himself it was stress, the aftermath of Nate's disappearance, but the whispers grew louder. One night, Calvin woke in a cold sweat. The whispers weren't just outside anymore. They were inside his head. He could swear they called his name, repeated it like a chant, over and over. Rhea wasn't immune either. She called him one afternoon, voice shaking, panic barely restrained. She said the shadows were following her, not just in the forest now, at home, at work. She told him about an incident at the grocery store. A man, standing just a little too close in the checkout line, his eyes hollow, his smile empty. When Rhea looked back, the man was gone. Calvin started documenting everything, recording sounds, writing down every whispered word he heard. He even set up cameras around his apartment. One morning, he found the footage disturbed. Static, flickers, a dark figure just out of focus. The hollow wasn't done with them. It was closing in. They say that places like Devil's Hollow don't just disappear. They bury themselves deeper, waiting until they're ready to pull you in. Calvin and Rhea agreed they had to face it. They planned one last trip to the hollow, to find answers, or to finally put the past to rest. The night Calvin and Rhea returned to the hollow was thick with silence, the kind that presses against your skin and burrows into your bones. They packed carefully, cameras, flashlights, notebooks, determined to document everything. The moment they crossed the ridge and entered the clearing, a cold wave hit them, despite the mild autumn air. Calvin felt his heartbeat spike. Rhea gripped his arm, eyes darting into the dark. For hours they combed the area. They found old rusted tools half buried, charred logs scattered like ancient ruins, and strange symbols carved into tree bark, circles and lines they didn't recognize. No sign of Nate, no sign of the strange figure from the photo, only the feeling of being watched, heavy, oppressive. Suddenly their flashlights flickered. The whispering rose in volume, no longer distant, but all around. Voices in a language neither could understand. Calvin's camera caught something on the edge of the frame, a shadow slipping between trees. They moved faster, heart pounding. Then they saw it, a figure standing motionless at the edge of the clearing. Tall, thin, barefoot, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Rhea whispered, "It's the hollow." Calvin raised his camera and the figure vanished. They fled, stumbling through the underbrush until they broke free into open land. Back home, Calvin burned the map. They never returned. Some places aren't meant for us. Some stories don't end. And some hollows will always be watching. If you thought that was unsettling, wait until you hear what happened next. Our next story takes us deep into the heart of another cursed campsite, where darkness waits not just in the woods, but in the minds of those who dare to stay. They say the worst thing about getting lost in the woods is not the bears or the cold. It's the silence. When you realize your phone has no signal and the trees start closing in like they know you're alone. It started with a weekend plan. Nico, 29, was a freelance wildlife photographer who lived out of his beat-up Subaru Forester. He was the kind of guy who chased silence, remote camping, abandoned trails, solo hikes. He didn't post much, didn't call much, didn't text. That made it hard to know when something went wrong. This story comes from his brother, Marcus, who spent a year trying to piece it together from Nico's last photos, voice notes, and a dusty journal he found buried in the glove compartment. The last time anyone saw Nico was August 12th, 2022. He'd told Marcus he was heading into the Selwood National Forest, somewhere between Washington and Oregon, near a closed-down ranger trail called Cat Hollow Ridge. It was one of those areas where Google Maps showed a road, but the GPS wouldn't update once you got past a certain mile marker. Just endless trees and a red bar that said, "No service." Nico's dashcam caught hours of footage of him driving alone down dirt roads, mumbling to himself, singing. He seemed calm, even excited. There was a timestamp at 5:14 p.m. just before dusk when he stopped to film a deer standing in the middle of the road. It didn't move, even as his car crept forward. Then it bolted into the woods, and Nico laughed. He didn't know he'd already passed the last spot where his phone would work. That night, Marcus says, Nico made his first campsite. You can see it in the photos. A single orange tent near a shallow river bend, a dead tree bent at a weird angle in the background. But something in the photo felt off. Not the lighting, not the exposure. It was what looked like a shape between the trees, not solid, but like the image had been distorted by motion blur. No one was around, yet something had moved while the photo was being taken. Nico didn't notice. In his voice memo, recorded at 9:43 p.m., he sounds relaxed. Camp's up, fire's going, might try to hike deeper tomorrow. Haven't seen a single person since noon, not even a ranger post, just me in the woods. I love it. Marcus told the investigator that this was the last night his brother sounded normal. The next recordings were different, disjointed, whispered. There's something about being completely alone that strips away the bravado. Because out there, no one hears you scream. And worse, no one hears you whisper back. There's something unnerving about a forest with no birdsong. It's as if nature itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to move, something that shouldn't. Morning came, but something was already wrong. The audio from Nico's next voice memo, recorded at 6:12 a.m., was filled with static, not background wind, but actual static, like interference. There was no cell tower nearby, no electronics that could cause that, and Nico sounded off. Didn't sleep much. Thought I heard something around 3, just crunching leaves. Probably a deer. I didn't go out to check. He laughs nervously, then goes quiet for several seconds before abruptly ending the memo. In his journal, scribbled in pencil, he wrote, "Woke up with the feeling someone had been watching me. Can't explain it. Tent was zipped, gear untouched. But I know I didn't feel alone." Later that day, dashcam footage showed Nico packing up camp and driving deeper into the trail system, far beyond where the ranger maps marked official campsites. He'd gone rogue. The trees grew thicker, the path narrower. His tires kicked up clouds of pine dust, and at one point, he had to stop and clear fallen branches just to pass. At 2:41 p.m., the dashcam caught something strange. For 3 full seconds, the screen goes black. No movement, no sound, just darkness. Then the feed resumes, and Nico's already farther down the road, as if something had cut the footage. Later in the footage, he stops at a small wooden structure, not a ranger cabin. It wasn't on any of the maps Marcus found. It looked more like an observation shack. Rotted wood, busted shutters, a rusty metal door with no handle. Inside, there were broken frames, moldy blankets, and the faint smell of ash. He took one photo from inside the shack, and what showed up in the background was never explained. A smudge on the window that looked like a handprint. But there was no moisture, no oil, no reason it should have been there. He left shortly after. That night, the final voice memo of the day was just 13 seconds long. "I think I'm being followed. I haven't seen anyone, but I keep hearing it. It's always right when I stop walking, like it knows I'm listening." No laughter this time, just silence. Then a soft sound in the background, like breath. Not Nico's. Out here, there's no backup, no one to call, no one who knows where you are. When your phone says, "no service," what it really means is you're alone in a dead zone. By the third day in the woods, something changes inside a person. The silence gets heavier, the trees get closer, and your own thoughts become the loudest thing around. Nico didn't record much the next morning. There's one photo, just one, time-stamped, 7:48 a.m. It shows the edge of a pine grove, the sky overcast, light fog rolling through the underbrush. And in the distance, almost hidden by shadow, is a structure, wooden, dilapidated, and very much not abandoned. He didn't say anything about it in his journal that morning, but Marcus found new writing, sharper, more frantic, written in pen across the page margins. "Didn't put that tent there." There's no tent in the photo, but it's clear he saw one or thought he did. When Marcus compared the next dashcam footage, Nico's voice is tense, even paranoid. "I just passed that same tree again. I swear I marked it with a zip tie. There's no way I looped back." He was lost, but not in the normal way. This wasn't GPS confusion. This wasn't wrong turns. It felt like something was changing the trail behind him. Then came the shack. It appeared at 11:03 a.m., past a small clearing that wasn't on any previous footage. It was the same one he'd visited before, except now the door was open. Nico got out. His camera was mounted on his shoulder. The footage is shaky as he approached, whispering to himself, "It wasn't open yesterday." Inside, things were different. There were fresh boot prints in the dust. Someone had written on the far wall in black marker, "No signal, no exit, no way out." Beneath it, scratched into the wood with something sharp, were the initials, N.D. Nico's own initials. He stumbled back from the wall, muttering, "I didn't write that. I didn't." The camera audio is full of wind, then something sharp, like the sound of knuckles rapping on glass. But no one was behind him. Outside, the fog had thickened. When he turned back to the shack, the door was closed again. No wind, no hands, just closed. And this time, it wouldn't open. He ran. But every direction looked the same. Trees, fog, moss, trees, fog, moss. Even when he tried using the sun to orient himself, it was gone behind a thick gray wall of cloud. He made camp somewhere new that night, deep in a grove surrounded by thick pines. There's no voice memo this time, just the faint sound of him crying in the dark. The forest doesn't need to chase you. It just waits, and slowly, it becomes all there is. By the fourth night, Nico wasn't trying to get out. He was trying to survive until morning, without losing his mind. There are no voice memos from this day. Instead, there's a series of photos. Blurred, poorly framed, some taken at odd angles. Most of them show trees, but one, taken accidentally at 3:17 a.m., shows Nico's sleeping bag, and next to it, a bare human footprint in the mud. Nico had been wearing boots. He was alone. No one else was supposed to be out there. His journal scribbles got worse. "I saw him again, just beyond the tree line. Same clothes, same stillness. He never moves. He just watches. What does he want?" The most disturbing entry? It was dated. The day before. He wrote it, like he'd lost track of time. That night, dash cam footage captured Nico sitting in the driver's seat, engine off, talking to the empty cabin. I think I've been here longer than 4 days, but the food's not gone yet. The water's fine. I keep hearing the same crows every morning, the same 3 calls, like clockwork. He turns to look behind him, nothing there, but the camera glitches, and for half a second, in the mirror reflection, there's what looks like another face on behind his. He grabs his gear and leaves the car. The last dash cam timestamp is 5:41 p.m. From here, all that remains is body cam footage. The footage is unsteady. Nico is breathing heavily, talking to himself, his voice cracking with exhaustion. This isn't how forests work. This isn't right. I keep circling. I buried my solar charger by the creek, and now I'm back here again. I dug it up. Same spot, same charger. I left this place hours ago. He pans the camera across the creek, and there, standing across the water, still as stone, is a figure. No face, no color, just a person, featureless and still, as if watching him through the fog. Nico whispers, "I thought he was just in my head." He backs away and slips on the wet rock. The footage goes dark for a second. When it returns, he's sitting upright inside the shack again. The same shack, door wide open, except this time, the walls are covered in writing, his writing. Hundreds of lines scratched and scribbled across the inside. There is no outside. There is no trail. There is no service. Nico didn't die in the woods. He unraveled in them. Some people get lost out there. Others get claimed. 3 months after Nico vanished, a hunter found his Subaru. It was discovered off a fire access road not marked on any map, completely covered in branches, like someone had tried to bury it in the woods. No signs of violence, no signs of struggle, just an untouched car. And a bag inside, containing Nico's SD cards, maps, and journal. Marcus, his brother, never stopped looking. He was the one who leaked the footage online, desperate for help, for answers, for anything. And what those clips showed, they weren't edited, they weren't faked, they were exactly what Nico had lived through. A park ranger, after reviewing the tapes, said, "That shack, it's not in the Pine Ridge Registry. No structure like that has ever been permitted out there, and no private cabins are allowed in the restricted zone. We searched that whole area. There's nothing there now." But the timestamps don't lie. The photos, the handwriting, the static-filled voice memos, they tell a story that shouldn't be real. And yet, in the last 11 seconds of the final recovered body cam file, the footage goes black. But the audio? It keeps running. You hear heavy breathing, a single click, like a switchblade opening. And then, a voice, not Nico's, slow, cold, and whispered right next to the mic. "You came looking, now you stay." The file ends. To this day, no one knows what happened to Nico. His body was never recovered. His last known location doesn't exist on any official record. And the shack? It was never found again. But Marcus keeps searching, because sometimes, when he plays back the audio at night, he swears he hears something new. A voice, buried beneath the static, repeating the same 3 words. No way out. Some forests are alive, and some don't like being seen. But Pine Ridge isn't the only place that takes something from those who wander too deep. Over in Montana, tucked along the edge of the Bitterroot Mountains, lies another campsite. Locals call it Pine Creek. And if you ask around, they'll warn you not to camp there after dark. They say something watches from the ridgeline, something that wants to be seen, but only when it's far too late. Every small town has that place, The one people don't talk about unless they're drunk or trying to scare newcomers. For the folks in Hamilton, Montana, that place is Pine Creek. And the one thing they'll all tell you: don't camp past the third ridge after dark. That's the line. In the fall of 2018, 4 longtime friends decided to get away from work, stress, and noise for a weekend camping trip. They were all in their mid to late 20s, smart, grounded, not the type to buy into urban legends. Josh, the one who organized the trip, had grown up in the area. Eliza, his girlfriend, was into photography and nature. Keon, a med student, always had a practical explanation for everything. And David, the quiet one, was dealing with a recent breakup and needed the escape. They wanted remote, they wanted silence, and Pine Creek delivered. The hike took nearly 5 hours. They passed through switchbacks, dense brush, and rocky outcrops until they reached the third ridge. A narrow overlook with a clear view of the lower forest canopy and a deep cut of the creek below. Josh paused there. "All right. This is the last point where there's ever been cell service," he said, looking at his phone. "You sure you want to do this?" Eliza shrugged. David said nothing. Keon just grinned. "It's 2018, not a horror movie." "What, are we scared of ghost deer now?" So they crossed the ridge. As soon as they descended the narrow pass into the clearing below, things began to shift. The sun was still high, around 2:30 p.m., but the light felt dimmer, not cloudy, just muted, like it was filtering through something thick in the air. The wind stopped. Even the birds quieted down. "Anyone else's ears feel weird?" Eliza asked. "Like we're in a pressurized cabin or something." They brushed it off, thinking it was just elevation changes. But the deeper they moved into the tree line, the more wrong things felt. At around 4:15 p.m., they reached a flat clearing near the banks of Pine Creek. It was beautiful. Ancient pines stood like sentinels in a wide circle around soft moss and scattered boulders. They set up 2 tents, started a small fire, and got the jet boil running. By all appearances, it was perfect. But the first sign that something was off came from David. While Josh and Eliza argued over how to start the fire, David had wandered about 50 feet from the camp, just standing, staring into the trees. Keon noticed first. "Yo, Dave, you good?" David didn't respond. He didn't turn around. He just kept looking forward, eyes locked on something in the trees that no one else could see. When Josh walked up to him and touched his shoulder, David flinched violently, almost like he'd forgotten where he was. I'm fine," he muttered. "Thought I saw something, but it was probably just a deer." That night, the temperature dropped quickly. They cooked hot dogs over the fire, passed around a bottle of bourbon, and played low music through a Bluetooth speaker. Laughter came easy. The tension from earlier seemed to fade, until at exactly 9:27 p.m. the speaker cut out. Not just paused, it shut off. Dead. No battery warning, no signal loss. Then Eliza looked up. "Wait, where are the stars?" The sky, once clear, was now pitch black. Not overcast, not foggy, just a solid, unnatural void. As if something had swallowed the stars whole. Josh pulled out his phone. No service. Keon checked the GPS unit. It glitched, frozen on their last known coordinates. Then came the silence. No fire crackle, no wind, no bugs. Even the creek, which had been rushing loud and steady behind their camp, was suddenly silent. Josh stood up and walked toward the edge of the clearing, toward where the creek flowed. But the water was gone. The bed was dry. A 10-foot wide trench where a rushing current had been just an hour ago. They all stood there, frozen. No one spoke. Not even Keon had something clever to say. That's when David finally broke the silence. "We should leave. Now." There's a moment in every true horror story where survival depends on one thing: listening to the one person who isn't trying to rationalize. But they didn't listen. Josh insisted they stay. He didn't want to risk hiking steep trails in total darkness. Eliza agreed, but nervously kept glancing at the tree line. Keon? He was starting to look different. "Relax. Maybe it's just a weather thing. Solar flare, magnetic field, some weird forest echo making us all paranoid." But even he didn't believe himself. They all saw the way his hands shook. That night, they slept in shifts, and between 1 and 3 a.m., each one of them, in their own way, heard footsteps. Heavy, slow, and circling the tents, branches cracking, breathless, dragging movements just beyond the firelight. They never saw anything, but no one truly slept. And when morning came, the creek was flowing again. As if nothing had happened, it should have been their cue to pack up and go. But they didn't, because the forest hadn't finished with them yet. Some places have a way of watching you, not with eyes, but with pressure. And when you wake up with that pressure on your chest, that silence pushing into your ears, your body knows what your mind tries to deny. You're not alone. Not really. The sun rose late. Though the trees weren't dense overhead, the light still took hours to fully reach their camp. By the time they crawled out of their tents, it was almost 9:30 a.m. Eliza was the first to speak. "I don't think I slept at all." She looked pale, dark circles under her eyes. Her camera was still around her neck, untouched since the day before. David was next. "Something circled our tent, I swear to God." Keon was unusually quiet. No sarcastic remarks, just sipping coffee, his eyes scanning the woods like he was waiting for something to move. Josh shrugged it all off. "We're all just tired, freaked ourselves out last night." But even he didn't believe it, not after seeing that dry creek bed, not after waking up 3 times, convinced someone was breathing inches from his tent. They agreed to stay one more night, only to get proper rest before hiking back in the morning. But the truth, no one wanted to admit they were afraid to hike out alone, because whatever had stalked them the night before, it felt like it was waiting. Around noon, they tried to distract themselves. Josh and Keon fished upstream. Eliza wandered off to take photos. David stayed behind, claiming he had a headache. Eliza never made it far. Barely 10 minutes into her walk, she noticed something strange. Every single photo on her camera from yesterday was gone. "No memory card found," the screen said. But she remembered checking it before bed. She remembered scrolling through shots of the clearing, of Josh's dumb fish face, of the sunset. Gone. She popped the battery out, restarted it. Still nothing. Then she heard it. A single whistle. Not a bird, not a human voice. Something long, high, unnatural. "Hello?" she called out. No answer. The air was still, heavy, then snapping, branches to her left. She turned, nothing. But now the woods behind her looked different, like the trees had shifted, like the path back to camp had grown unfamiliar. She turned in a slow circle. The sound of the creek was gone again. "Okay, no," she whispered to herself, gripping the camera tight. "I came this way. I came this way." And just like that, she was back at camp, not 10 minutes later. 2. You ever lose time? Not like a nap, not like daydreaming. I mean really lose it. Like someone cut 10 minutes out of your life and stitched reality back together with shaking hands. That's what happened to Eliza. Back at camp, Keon had a different story. While casting upriver, he spotted someone moving through the trees across the bank, about 50 yards out. Tall, human-like, but stiff, like they were gliding between trunks, not walking. He called out, "Yo, you good out there?" But the figure didn't turn, didn't stop, just slipped behind a tree and never came out the other side. That night, everything escalated. At 2:13 a.m., David woke up choking, not coughing. Choking. Something was in his throat, thick, sour, gritty. He stumbled out of the tent and fell to his knees, gagging in the dirt. Josh ran out to help, and what came out of David's mouth made them all stop cold. Pine needles. Clumps of them, dozens, some sharp enough to pierce the inside of his cheek. "What the hell? What is that?" Josh shouted. David could barely speak. "They were in my mouth, in my throat. I was eating them in the dream." Keon refused to sleep after that. He started carving a stick with his hunting knife, just sitting near the fire with wide, dry eyes. Eliza was next to him, wrapped in a sleeping bag, shivering despite the fire's warmth. Then, the forest made its next move. At exactly 3:12 a.m., they heard footsteps. Again, this time no circling, just a straight line. Toward the camp, heavy, measured, coming from the far side of the creek. Josh grabbed the flashlight and aimed it across the water. Nothing. The steps stopped. "If someone's messing with us, I swear to God, I will call the Then the flashlight, flickered. And for a second, just a second, it landed on something tall. Too tall. A figure, not a bear, not a person. Thin, long, wrong. And then it was gone. They didn't sleep again. No one dared to go back into the tents. Keon whispered something around 4 a.m. "I don't think it wants us to leave." When a place wants to keep you, it doesn't use chains. It unravels your mind, makes the woods familiar, then foreign. It takes your sleep, your time, your sense of direction, until all you remember is the silence and the watching. By the third night, it wasn't just fear. It was something else. You can rationalize fear. You can't rationalize when the forest starts thinking for you. Josh wanted to leave at dawn. No more discussions. No more hesitations. He packed up his bag in silence and told the others, "We hike out. No breaks. Phones stay on. Don't wander. That's it." David agreed. Keon too. But Eliza, she just stared into the trees. No camera around her neck. She had stopped using it. "It's not done with us," she said softly. "If we leave now, we'll bring it with us." Josh froze. "What did you just say?" "You don't get it, do you?" she snapped. "It's not a thing. It's the forest, or the creek, or something in it. It doesn't want us gone because we've already been claimed." Keon backed away slowly. David just stared. "Josh," he cursed and stormed off. "Then stay here, Eliza. Stay and talk to the fanting trees." They broke camp in 15 minutes, except Eliza. She refused, so they left. Or at least, they tried to. The trail that brought them in? Gone. Not overgrown, not hidden. Gone. The markers they'd carved into tree trunks on day one? Not a single one remained. Josh paced, swore, climbed onto a boulder to try and get cell service. Nothing. Keon pulled out his Garmin GPS unit. Even with satellite view, it glitched and refused to pinpoint them. David started to cry. "I just want to go home, man. I just want to go home." They argued, loudly, until Keon screamed, "Shut up," and pointed. Down the hill, just past the clearing, a figure. Eliza. Walking calmly, eyes fixed straight ahead, vanishing into the trees. They followed. No questions, no hesitation, just panic. They walked for an hour, then 2. The forest never changed. Same tree formations. Same logs, same mossy rocks, the same squirrel skull in the path, again and again. A loop. Josh dropped to the ground. We're not moving. This place is screwing with us. Like that Blair Witch snut. Keon sat beside him, clutching his knife. David stood quietly, scanning the trees. Then he whispered, "I think Eliza's dead." No one responded, because deep down, they already knew. The version they saw wasn't her, it was bait. Forests this old, they have ways. They'll use your memories, your guilt, your friends' faces. They'll speak to you in the voices you trust most, and they'll never let you see where the trap begins, until it's far too late. That night, they didn't make a fire. They sat in a tight triangle, backs facing each other. Josh held a flare gun, Keon his knife. David gripped a rock in both hands like a primitive weapon. No one spoke for hours. Then, something walked past them, inches away. Not running, not creeping, just walking. Heavy, slow, deliberate, breathing deep, wet, guttural breaths. It circled once, twice, then silence and laughter. Eliza's laughter, high, drifting, somewhere far off, somewhere impossibly close. Josh fired the flare. A burst of red light cut through the canopy, and for one sickening second, they saw it. Long arms, no face, no clothes. Its feet weren't touching the ground. Then the flare dropped. Darkness returned. None of them slept, not even for a second. By dawn, they tried again. They picked a random direction and started walking. South, always south. But the deeper they went, the more off things became. Dead trees, standing straight as if alive, frogs with no eyes, footprints that started inside their own. Once, David swore he saw his younger self staring back from behind a tree. He didn't talk again for hours. At noon, they stumbled across a new clearing. It looked like salvation, but it wasn't. The remains of Moss's another camp. Shredded tents, a crushed portable stove, rusted metal bones of a folding chair. Inside one of the torn tents, a water bottle, the same brand Keon carried, with his name written in Sharpie. This is mine," he muttered. "I don't understand." Josh picked something off the ground, a Polaroid photo, the 3 of them, sleeping by the fire, from last night. But none of them had a camera that could take that. None of them remembered the picture. Keon looked around slowly. "I think we're already dead. Some places, you don't escape. You just circle deeper, until the forest folds you into its memory." The fire was their only anchor. That flickering flame pushed back the dark, but it also held their fear, feeding it, waiting for it to rise. They returned to the clearing, the one with the shattered tents. No one spoke as they rebuilt the fire with trembling hands. Keon lit a stick and passed it around. "We're burning whatever this thing wants." David shook his head. "That's not how it works. It's not about fire or smoke. It's about memory. It's about who it chooses to keep." Eliza's absence pressed on them like a stone. They argued over what to do. "Go back for her," Josh said, voice cracking. "She's not gone. We can find her." "And get trapped forever?" Keon replied. "No, we stay. We survive." Night fell again. The fire grew low. David sat staring into the embers. "I remember something. From when I was a kid, my grandpa told me about this place. The Pine Creek legend, about a spirit that protects the forest by trapping wanderers, feeding off their memories, replacing their faces with emptiness." Josh scoffed. "Old man stories." David's eyes were dark. "Maybe, but my grandpa said the only way to break free is to remember who you really are, not the face you want to see." The wind picked up. branches snapped. Something whispered just beyond the tree line. Then, the fire burst higher, and from the shadows stepped a figure. Tall, thin, shrouded in smoke and ash. Its face, a blur of shifting memories. One moment a friend's smile, the next, a stranger's cold eyes. The Pine Creek thing doesn't want your body. It wants your mind, your stories, the parts of you you hide even from yourself. The creature reached out a hand, like it was inviting them to remember. And in that moment, David saw his own reflection in the fire. A boy lost in the woods, forever trying to find his way home. Keon gripped his knife tighter. Josh dropped to his knees, shaking. They understood. To survive, they had to confront their darkest memories. But some memories are better left forgotten. When the fire dies, so do the last threads of hope. In the darkest woods, the truth waits. Cold, patient, unforgiving. They sat in silence, 4 souls tethered by fear and fading light. Josh was the first to break the quiet. We face it tomorrow, together. David nodded, but his eyes betrayed the weight of what they'd seen. Keon stared into the flames, sweat beading on his forehead. If we don't make it out, tell my family I love them. Night stretched longer than any before. Shapes moved just beyond the firelight. Whispers slid between the trees. Memories flickered. David saw his mother's face, but twisted, empty. Josh heard Eliza's voice calling his name, distant, pleading. Keon's grip on his knife tightened until his knuckles whitened. Suddenly, the fire sputtered. Smoke thickened. The forest closed in, and the creature returned, not alone. More shadows emerged, drifting like smoke, faceless, relentless. They tried to run, but the forest fought. Branches clawed, roots wrapped like snakes. The ground seemed to pulse beneath their feet. Every direction was wrong. They realized then, the forest was a maze of memories. Each step forward was a step deeper into the trap, and there was no escape without losing themselves. One by one, they fell. Josh screaming into the night, David's body crumpling against a tree, Keon disappearing into the shadows. Only the fire remained, flickering weakly, and Eliza's laughter echoing through the darkness. Morning came. A lone hiker found the abandoned camp. The fire was out, the tents shredded, the gear torn. No sign of the 4 friends, just a single photo, burned around the edges, showing 4 figures standing by the fire, smiling. Some stories end with answers. This one ends with questions, because in Pine Creek the past never forgets, and the forest never lets go. If you enjoyed these 4 true late-night camping horrors, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because out there, in the woods, the stories never stop, and neither do we.